Hello, everyone. Welcome to our weekly hour. We're looking forward to our speaker today and the topic. While we're letting people come into the room, just wanted to say thank you very much to those that have already said hello. Please do share your name, where you're dialing in from, and your area of expertise or what you work in. It always helps us to understand our audience and also maybe to speak more in relation to the interests that you have. So I think we're going to get started now. My name is Valerie de Liedekerke. I am the coordinator of the Blue Mission Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse, which is part of the Mission Ocean projects here in the EU. I am also the head of ocean policy and stakeholder engagement at the Atlantic International Research Center. So today I am joined by Andrea Quintela. He is a specialist in marine environmental planning, focusing on governance and participatory approaches or processes. He serves as the scientific coordinator of the Blue Azores Program, an initiative for conserving the Azores marine ecosystems. With a background in marine biology and a PhD in geography in integrated management of coastal zones, Adriano's work in marine spatial planning supports sustainable ocean use by reducing sector conflicts, promoting cooperation, and protecting the environment. He has participated in various international projects, bridging science and decision-making to address the complex interactions within coastal and marine environments. He will speak today to us about the very famous, well-known, and successful Blue Azores programs. Over to you, Adriano. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valerie. First of all, I would like to thank both Blue Mission and Air Center for the invitation and for the opportunity to present a program that I believe all Azorians or all Portuguese should be proud of. So I will share my screen. Please let me know if you can see well. So I'm going to show you or present to you briefly the process that took place for the last 5 years that culminated in this milestone, which was the designating of the biggest network of marine protected areas in the North Atlantic, and also to unveil what are the next steps for an effective implementation and an effective implementation of this network. So this program all started by two scientific expeditions, one in 2017 and the other one 2019. One promoted by National Geographic Pristine Sea that led the designation of the Azores as a biodiversity hotspot, and then a second one with Oceano Azul Foundation, the regional government of the Azores, Azorian scientists, Waite Institute, another scientific expedition, and these two expeditions made very clear that there is the need to protect and promote and value the natural capital of the Azores. And this is why these three partners, with this shared vision, created or signed a memorandum of understanding with the participation of these three partners. This whole process of the Blue Azores program is led by the government, of course, and then Oceano Azul Foundation and Waite Institute bring resources to make this a reality. So besides this vision, we also share among the partners that we need to think about the blue economy differently as we were thinking in the past. So there was a big misunderstanding between what is blue economy and the economy of the sea. So for us, it is clear that in order to have a true sustainable ocean economy, the activities that thrive in the ocean need to be in line with the ecosystems and making sure that these ecosystems keep their capacity to support these activities and still remain resilient and healthy. So based on this memorandum of understanding, we identified four major objectives. The first one is to protect 30% of the Azores Sea, which was now accomplished by the designation of the area. But this is just the first step. So the next steps will be to create management plans for all marine protected areas in the Azores, to make sure that the entire Azores Sea is used in a way that is sustainable. So promote the 100% sustainability use of the Azores Sea through the maritime spatial planning, and also to support the sector of fisheries to adapt to this new reality, making sure that the sector is viable and sustainable for the next generation. So these are the main actions, but we also have some support actions that help us to make sure that these main actions are accomplished. So one of them is the ocean literacy. I'm talking about the Educate for a Blue Generation, which basically what does is to create materials for teachers for the first years of school of the children to make sure that the narrative, the contents of the ocean are included in the daily life of the students. We are now present in all 9 islands. We already reach over 6,000 students. Then we have an ideation program for blue economy. So what it does is also make sure that we help people that have ideas and they want to make these ideas a reality. So it's an ideation program. Also through Cool Azores, we also try to build capacity in the NGOs that focus in the ocean to make sure that these NGOs are part of the decisions, part of the public policies related to the preservation of the ocean. We started this process with a huge challenge. The Azores Economic Exclusive Zone is almost 1 million square kilometers. Over half of the Economic Exclusive Zone of Portugal is from the Azores, and having in mind this challenge, the president of the regional government in the conference and the UN Oceans Conference in a session called Leading by Doing, committed publicly that there was the intention to protect 30% of the Azores Sea through at least 15% fully protected. So we are talking about the 30% means over almost 300,000 square kilometers of sea, being 150,000 without the possibility of undertaking extractive activities. That is because we know that, and science tells us that not all MPAs are the same. We know by science that there is a direct correlation between the level of protection and also the capacity of recovering, of protecting biodiversity. For example, in this map on the right, you can see that if the areas are placed and have the scale that is capable to produce benefits for a larger area, also the fishery sector are one of the most are the ones that also benefit. As you can see, the fishing effort is highly in the Gulf of Maine on the boundaries of MPAs, And if you see clearly, if you see carefully, you can even see the connectivity between MPAs through the fishing effort. So this is a clear sign, a fact that marine protection works, and don't work only for those who drive for ecotourism, for example, but also for the ones that rely on living resources. We also know, and it's obvious that marine protected areas. Sorry, this is the marine protected areas here on the above are the tool that we have to achieve the sustainable goal 14. But more important than that, if you think about the marine protected areas and the overall sustainable development goals, you can see that there is a cross-cutting contribution to these goals, and some of them are indivisible to the achievement of this goal. And by that, I mean, for example, the decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So this is an overall, sorry, it's in Portuguese, but I will try to explain our methodology for the designation of the areas. Just for you to let you know, we are here, the legislation is approved. So the first step was to map uses and activities, natural values, and priority areas for conservation. Based on these two components, we started the participative process of co-creation of the areas through the use of a participative mapping tool called SeaSketch, a powerful tool to design and also to assess the contribution of each area and of the network towards the specific conservation objective that science gave us. So based on this participative process, we were able to achieve a proposal and then the decision-making process that led to the approval of legislation. In yellow here, you can see the next step. And one of the, I will talk more about this later, one of the innovations of this legislation is that not only designate the areas, but also defines the framework and also the timeline for the effective implementation and management of this area. So our methodology of the participative mapping tool was simple. Basically, we map natural values, we map the uses, and then we start drawing lines on the map, assessing the performance of the network and the areas in face of the specific conservation objectives that were presented by science, discussed by stakeholders, and approved by stakeholders. This is a map of the entire participatory process. We have on the left scientific process that informed the participative process. Just for you to be aware of, we are talking about over 40 meetings with stakeholders, trying to negotiate areas, assessing the performance of the areas, and then until we were able to find a solution. So the participative process was divided in two. What I was talking about was just the oceanic one. There are several reasons why we divided these processes. One is because the scientific knowledge regarding the oceanic space is more systematic, was more systematic. And also because the kind of stakeholders are different. In the coastal, for example, we are talking about 9 different participative processes. So so science informed the participative process, and both processes informed the decision-making process. The science process of the oceanic was done through the deep sea group of the University of the Azores, Oceanos, that undertook a systematic conservation planning scenarios for the Azores deep sea, and was able to identify the specific conservation objectives of the network capable of producing benefits outside the areas and reach benefits for the entire economic exclusive zone, and also as a result, the identification of priority areas for conservation, which was the base for starting the participatory. In order to identify priority areas for conservation, these were some of the natural values that the science told us that we needed to include in the network. So identified vulnerable marine ecosystems, ecological and biological important areas, essential habitats, pristine seas, hydrothermal vents, and submarine seamounts. So in the end, we come up with this list of 17 specific conservation objectives. I'm not going through all of them, but I will highlight the most important ones. For example, this network is able to protect 100% of the known vulnerable marine ecosystems. It protects 100% of the hydrothermal vents, which we know are really important not only for scientific research because they are a unique habitat, but also because they are really important also for future bioeconomy. Also, as I told you, 75% of the deep water and shallow seamounts were also included in the network. So this is the map that where we started the participative process. So beneath each of these polygon, there is a set of natural values quantifiable that allowed us, by drawing lines on the map, assessing the performance of the area. So I will try to show you very quickly how this participative mapping tool works. Basically, you can upload all the information that come from the blue paper that led to the priority areas for conservation, such as special planning regions, fish richness, shark richness, near natural areas, essential fish habitats, and so on. So this is the natural value. But we also were able to upload the uses and activities, and on the offshore we are talking about fisheries mainly. So this way we're not only able to assess the performance in face of the specific objectives, but we were also able to assess the impact on the activities that occur in the area. So once you have a proposal, for example, this is the list of all the proposals that we negotiated with stakeholders, but we could live assess the performance of the network and individual MPAs. So you can run a report. This report can give you the protection level based on the activities that you allow or not allow inside an MPA. What is the size of it? For example, you can assess things like the impact of the area based on the level of protection for each fishing year that happened inside the MPA. You can also assess the impact of each for example, the habitat type protection. Based on, we have the target, for example, in this case of 15%, we can almost immediately see if we are reaching this target or not. So basically, this became like a game with stakeholders. The game was, let's create an MPA network, maximizing the conservation and the specific conservation goals, minimizing as much as possible the impact on the activity. So we also give the stage to stakeholders to present the justifications, the rationale behind their proposals. This was a very long and very fruitful process. And this is the kind of a report that you can assess of the network, and this was basically the ending of the participative process. So we ended the participative process with lack of achievement in two specific conservation goals, and this is understandable because these conservation goals overlap with the activities and uses. And these are the were 100% of non-vulnerable marine ecosystems and the seamounts. Based on this impasse, we had to come back for science. We asked for an additional scientific advice. We used also the bioeconomic study, and based on the decisions made in the stakeholder engagement process, based in this advice, the regional government have decided and have come up with a network that doesn't protect 100% of the network of the vulnerable marine ecosystems, but we are pretty close. We protect 78% of the seamounts. We are over the protection of seamounts, and we have an impact of 29.1% on the bottom longline fishing, which is basically the fishing gear that has more bycatch, more impact on the vulnerable marine ecosystem. So in terms of scale, if you say, it is understandable that we are protecting 30%. We are reducing the fishing effort in almost 30%. So this is what happened. So we had in the past 35,000 square kilometers of marine protected areas. Most of them are effective because they don't have management plans, and we come up with a network that, according to our experts and according to the expert science, tells us that is able to produce benefits not only inside the MPAs but also in the overall economic exclusivity. So this is one of the innovations of this new legislation. In order to make sure that we don't have any more paper parks, and this as a continuity, we are pretty much clear that this is only the first step if we want to reach 2030 with marine protected areas producing benefits and well managed. So the legislation incorporates in this text the timeline and the framework for the effective implementation of the network. So first, the publication of the law we are expecting to be November 2024. This is always a guess. But 9 months after the publication of the law, it enters into force. And then 3 months after the entering into force, we need to come up with a strategy for management of the network of MPAs and to nominate a management authority in the consultative council. The consultative council is with the representatives of the regional government, but the management authority, it's supposed to be a body that is detached from the political forum, because we believe that the management of marine protected areas cannot be done in political side. So 1 year after the approval of the strategy, which basically the strategy is it's the definition of the way how we get to the management plans, we have to come up with the approval of the enforcement and financial system, and to approve marine protected area, the management plans and spatial plans if there is the need for them. Just to say that for the first time, we have a network that is based in quantitative specific conservation objectives. Therefore, we have a network where we know the contribution of each MPA towards the conservation objectives of the network. So it makes sense, and this is something we are still brainstorming, it makes sense that one of the solutions could be the network management plan. And then after this process, we have 3 years since the enforcement of the law to integrate, to revise this law and to integrate the coastal marine protected areas. Another innovation of the law is their annexes. For each MPA, you have a file where besides the normal things that occur in this kind of legislations, you have the management objectives, the regime of uses inside each MPA. You have a very dense characterization. And if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong, but this is one of the unique cases where you have, for example, bibliographic references inside a law, which makes all much more transparent and more accessible to users. So this innovation brought benefits, right? You probably all saw in the news the impact that this network is doing all over the world, also because the timing was perfect, because we approved the law some weeks before the COP 16 in Colombia. But the impact in terms of the media was huge. We are talking about over 3 billion views for over 170 different publications, important news such as BBC, National Geographic, etc. And also the recognition that the Azores, what is doing, is basically giving the example. So that's why it was really important and really well chosen, the session in the UN's Oceans Conference, leading by doing. This is exactly what the Azores is undertaking, and also affirming their capacity to manage their ocean, and affirming themselves as huge maritime territories that have a word to say in terms of conservation. Also this year, the regional government by its president in the Our Oceans conference in Greece have committed with the next steps. And by next steps, I mean the implementation, the effective implementation of this network, a restructuring of the fishing sector that can adapt this sector to this new reality, capable of reducing the fishing effort and increasing the dividends from this activity, for example. And then we have the redefinition of the coastal marine protected areas, always with these three mottos. One is that Azores will keep leading this process worldwide by doing. We need to act now if we want, again, to reach out to 2030 with areas that are working, producing benefit. We are not anticipating nothing. We are running against time, and we owe that for future generations. And also, we want to do this with the entire Azorean community, and the idea is to don't leave no one behind. So just regarding the fishing sector, there are many measures. We are working this with the sector itself. So this is a co-creation process of the strategy for restructuring, but I can give you just some highlights of what is being put on the table. So one of the components of this restructuring will be financial compensations for immediate losses, people that used to work in marine protected areas and can prove that they reduce their income with this network. There will be a scheme of compensation financially, but there are many others that I'm not going to go through all of them. I was just going to focus on the financial compensation because it's something that people are really curious. So the idea is to target specific vessels that we already know that they will be affected by the new network. don't be generic, so being very tailored, very specific to each vessel, and then making this through simplicity, transparency, fairness. This compensation will have a temporary character until the ecosystems are recovering and producing benefits. And then the idea is to have an initial single compensation, then a phased compensation, and then compensation for provenance. And this is the kind of work we are doing to assess basically the impact of the MPAs vessel by vessel. And we are doing this using VMS data through the Navy. But we also, when it's not possible, and sometimes getting access to VMS data is not so easy as you might think, we use tools such as Global Fishing Watch that use IES data, and then we can assess generically what was the use by each vessel inside one specific MPA. Now the coastal process. We already started the coastal process, the participatory coastal process in 3 islands. But our approach had to be different because by strange that it can look, we do nothing about the way the coastal areas are used in terms of mapping the uses. So we needed first to make sure that we know these patterns of use in order to perform the same methodology overlapping with natural values. So for that, we also are aiming to produce communities of practice that share the same concerns within each island in order to create equitative coastal MPA network as well. So again, as I said, the ocean use survey was our first step. We needed to identify what were the areas where the activities are used with more intensity, and we used SeaSketch for that mission. So all of these documents that you are seeing here are available online. So I urge you, if you have curiosity, to go there and download it and have a look. So basically, what is the participatory mapping survey? Basically asks users what to indicate areas of use and with which intensity of the use of the value in terms of intensity of value that they use. Again, to understand the patterns of use of the ocean sea, to make sure that these activities that are compatible with the protection are compatible with the protection of marine environments, and also again to reduce the impact of the revised network of coastal MPAs on the activity. So basically, we were able to achieve almost 2,500 sector responses from almost 2,000 respondents. That represent patterns of use of over 5,000 individuals, which is for the realm of the Azores a huge achievement. So this is the kind of information we were able to extract from this study. Please don't compare islands. This is the maps relative in terms of intensity of use in terms of each island. So these results are not comparable between islands, but we can also do this comparison, and this is what you can see in this map. So basically, just for the fishing sector, we had like 842 fishermen represented in this map, which is a great achievement and one of a kind study in the Azores. This process was done through a working group, the Regional Secretary of Fisheries, the Regional Secretary for Maritime Policy, University of the Azores, and of course, Blue Azores. And this was with these maps that we started the participative process, assessing the quality of the mapping, gathering information regarding how they evaluate these maps. But more important than that, this was an underlying objective, was to create a community. In each island, a community that could sit at the same table, sometimes with a conflicting sectors, but sitting at the same table, talking about their island, their sea, because in the coastal process, the ownership, it's totally different than the offshore. So, and now we also need to map natural value, right? So this is a process that is a work in progress, and we are doing this led by Miguel Araújo, Professor Miguel Araújo from the University of Évora. What we are doing is to compile all the information that has been gathering through years and years of research and project regarding the mapping of natural values. We are already able to record over 1.3 million records and over 1,500 species from the 1,800 species that are identified for the coastal areas of the Azores. So this will be the maps that will overlap. Well, this is not the maps themselves, but just to show you that we are working on mapping what are the most priority areas for conservation in the coastal as well, to overlap that with the uses and then do the same approach. But this is an innovation from the oceanic process, because we know that climate change is so important for coastal communities. This process of systematic conservation planning will also incorporate models of climate change, and to understand which are the areas that are now refugia for the species but will stop being refugia, areas that are not refugia now but will become in the future, so that we can incorporate these models and this knowledge into the process of into the participative process, so that we can make the network of coastal MPA smart on the climate smart. And that's what I have for you. I'm more than happy to answer some questions.
Thank you very much, Adriano. That was very rich presentation and information, and extraordinary to see all that you've achieved and how much work it was, and pulling all of the stakeholders together to work collectively and collaboratively around this. So congratulations on you and all the team and everybody involved on this great achievement. We have quite a few questions. I think before I go to the questions, though, I was very curious because you've spoken about international legislation and kind of meeting those targets and the importance of those. But I'm also curious, how important was the EU nature restoration law coming into force in 2024 in your process, or in the decision-making process?
Well, I have mixed feelings about the restoration law. I think it's really important, but I'm afraid as well, because it's not so much tailored for archipelagic regions. But our goal was very, very clear. Basically, we need to protect these natural values. We need to protect values that are still intact, so that in the future we will not have to spend more money, and it's a lot of money. Restoring oceanic and deep sea ecosystem takes a lot of money. So the idea, and was one of the main arguments that we used, of course, was either you protect now that ecosystems are still more or less healthy, or you will have to spend a lot of money to restore the ecosystems in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe later I'm going to pick your brain a little bit about what you just mentioned about the nature restoration law and deep sea, maybe marine protection. But I'm going to move on to questions now, because I want to honor all our guests and participants here. We have a wonderful participation from all over the world. So first, starting with Mark Costello's question. How much of the area is fully, strictly protected? So no take, no killing, no trawling.
So, well, just to say that trawling is forbidden in the entire Azores, and 150,000 of these areas, maybe I can show the map again if I'm allowed.
You should be, yes.
Sure, just a second. So all the dark orange is fully protected, where you cannot have, it's incompatible with the level of protection having any kind of extractive activities. Um, this area in the north is really important because it also overlaps with the EFSA, and because it has at least 11 seamounts. It's the pathway for the migration of some important, iconic seabirds such as Kunming-Montreal and Alma Negra, but you also include in the network important places that have a lot of were reserves, but there was a lot of exceptions. And one of the exceptions was that pole and line tuna and live bait was allowed inside. So this becomes a different approach, basically formigas, Dom João de Castro, Condor, Princesa Alice, all these areas will be no extracting activities. All the other ones are highly protected. And what this highly protected means, it means that only activities with low impact on the environment on the bottom will be allowed. For example, the polling line will be one of the activities that it's compatible because it's seasonal, because it doesn't have contact with the bottom and while it's selective, and end lines as well, because as we know, end lines do not have the same amount of bycatch as long lines. I hope I answered your question, Mark.
Thank you. And just to piggyback a little bit on that, I was curious. So this new MPA network adds how much to the overall Portuguese MPA account?
Can you please rephrase? I didn't understand.
Yeah, so I was just curious, how much does Portugal have protected marine protected area?
So before the Azores MPAs, Portugal has something like 4.7. And according to our latest math, this will rise until 19 protection. So we are contributing with 15% for the overall protection of Portugal.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was it. Okay, next question, Jessica from Jessica Mello. What role does the simulation of economic opportunities for the Azores population play in your plan? What new economic opportunities are there for fishers, in particular, as they will bear the main economic losses in the near term? You spoke of the compensation scheme, I think.
Yeah. I'm not so sure that they will have so much loss. They will be the ones that will benefit from this network of MPAs. We have to put this in our minds once for all. We are doing this because we want the resources that they use, that are not only them, theirs, it's also mine, and it's a public resource, will be possible to use throughout generations. Of course, we need to make sure they adapt, and we need to capture also the knowledge fishermen have about the ocean, and we are working with them for that purpose. Thank
you. Thank you. Next question is also from Jessica. Are your existing sectoral regulations, so i.e. fishing, environmental, planning, tourism, maritime, etc., fit for the new Blue Azores model? what regulatory changes and innovations are needed to make the plan work?
Well, one of the things is a strategy for implementation for management, and one of the components of this management strategy is precisely to review the framework, the legal framework on the entire ecosystem, legal ecosystem of the Azores, which is, I dare to say, a mess. It's very dense. There's a lot of legislation. Sometimes they conflict with each other. So this is an opportunity to also take a look holistically to this legislation and to make sure that because this law will be an habilitating, right? It's the idea is to create a momentum to revise the legislation in terms of fisheries, in terms of maritime tourism, based on the strategy of implementation of the.
Okay, thank you. Maybe a little bit to piggyback on kind of that too. I was curious, is the Blue Azores program creating a roadmap of their process to help guide others to achieve marine protection?
Yes, actually, they are all the documents that have been produced, also with the change of the government last year, if I'm not mistaken. We created end of document that is very dense, that has all the roadmaps, all the process. It's all in our website, including the ocean use survey, including the facts and figures. It has a lot of information there that can help others because this is a tailored situation for the Azores. It might not, everything might work for the other places, but it might be a starting point.
Yes, I find these really helpful, these roadmaps with like decision trees that are kind of very bare bones and help people go through a decision process making.
Yes.
Okay, next question from Ronald Rupp. Are there any undersea telecom cables transiting the areas of study? How will new cable routes be treated and permitted? Well,
that's a very good question. Actually, there is some submarine cables. There is the intention of a new cable that comes from Portugal mainland, crosses the Azores, and will land, pass through Bermuda and then the United States. We still don't know exactly the route of those submarine cables, but infrastructures is one of the activities that were considered in terms of compatibility with marine protected areas. And on the fully protected, for example, there is no compatibility. However, as you might know, in terms of communications, the central government can declare this a project of national interest that overrides this legislation, for example. But we can also use weaknesses into strengths. And one of the things that they are considering is to produce a smart cable capable of collecting information that will help us monitor the deep sea of the Azores. So we need to see.
Thanks. Second question from Ronald, is the mapping application open to the public? And I would add on to that, is there a cost to using sea sketches?
No, it's an open source tool developed by the University of California, Santa Barbara, by my friend Will McIntosh. Is an open source. So it's a very powerful tool because stakeholders in the offshore, for example, they are very detached from the space, right? And once they come in going into maps, for example, or they are producing solutions for a network of MPAs, when they recognize their contribution in the final network, this becomes more easy to accept the process because this is not something that is imposed to them. It's a co-creation process where they have some inputs. Of course, they cannot be 100% happy. This is the participatory process. Everybody is gaining something, but in the end, they can review some of them, some of their intentions in the network.
Okay. Thank you. Then we have a question from an anonymous attendee that is asking, were you able to integrate, sorry, the question just jumped. Were you able to integrate climate change effects into the planning process? And if any specific management measures are envisioned to mitigate climate impacts on the Azores MPA network?
In fact, in the offshore, we didn't. But this is something we understand it's very important, very uh, uh, determinant for the coastal area. For sure, we will integrate climate impacts in the process, because we need to make sure that the scenarios of conservation consider also the global changes that will come up in 100 years from now, for example.
Okay. And next question from Maria Loloni. How long did the whole stakeholder engagement process last, and how was it financed? The workshops, the tool, the researchers?
So it started in December 2021, end up late 2023, if I'm not mistaken. So it was 3 years, no, 24. So it was more or less 3 years of participative process, and it was funded by Blue Azores Program, regional government, Oceano Azul Foundation, and White Institute.
Was it difficult to find that funding, out of curiosity? Or...
No, not really, because we do have resources from our partners that are allocated to this process, and we don't need to run after financing to run this process.
And just also maybe one more question on the back of that. Is there a how do I put this? Is there a process or thinking of getting ecosystem benefits from this MPA? So kind of a payback, if you will, mechanism to the locals? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things it's considered in the legislation is the principle of user payer, for example. So that we make sure that, for example, for tourism or other activities, if you need to use a marine protected area, you can contribute to the management of that marine protected area, or in some cases, if that's the case, to contribute to the compensation scheme of the fishermen, which are the ones that will not be allowed to go there.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Lidmila Osipova. Are there any new restrictions or regulations expected for cruise shipping on Azores, considering their heavy contribution to air and water pollution and potential collisions with the cetaceans?
Well, this is beyond my area of expertise. This is another department, it's the tourism secretary. But what I know is that they are at the moment producing the strategic plan for the tourism in the Azores, and of course, for this there is almost a common sense that we need to understand which is the carrying capacity of these kinds of activities in order that we can regulate this for sure.
Okay.
Regarding MPAs, as you know, you cannot limit the access or the passage of ships beyond the 12 nautical miles.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I just want to say a lot of people are saying thank you very much for this fantastic presentation that they've learned a lot from, so benefiting a lot. So thank you. Now, another question. Petra Rona says, I wonder how the tourism sector is involved and how you manage an increase in tourism activities that may have impact on the protected areas.
So they have been involved since the day one. Of course, we needed to, because, for example, the fishing sector has a big history of associativism, and the tourism sector does not have. So we needed to balance these two components in order that they can also contribute with their vision and claims, of course. One of the things that it's important for me to mention is that inside this network of MPAs, there are no allowed activities. They are all constrained, meaning that for an activity to occur inside an MPA, they will need to have a license scheme. There is no allowed, either they are forbidden or constricted. This means that we will have a tool in the future to assess the carrying capacity of each MPA towards each activity, including, for example, diving. We need to understand that these activities will also have an impact, and we need to understand which specifically each MPA, what is each MPA carrying capacity for each activity, in order that we can limit the number of licenses that you can issue for each MPA.
Thank you. Now, we've talked mostly about passive restoration, if you will, in establishing this MPA network. So Blue Mission AA is a ecosystem of, innovative ecosystem support project. We're working with startups, and we have startups here joining us here today, so which is great to see. And so I was curious, what advice would you give to a startup that is involved in an innovative ecosystem support solution in terms of so how could they get involved in this process? Not that they would obviously be involved or active in the MPA areas, but in the zones that are outside of the MPA areas where they could apply some of their innovative solutions that help active restoration. How could they get involved in the process of how you all came together and did the maritime spatial planning, mapping, and so on?
Well, I think how is quite easy. The Blue Azores program has been an aggregator of partnerships and cooperations. I just mentioned the principal partners, but besides that, we have people from, for example, MRAG, America, we have NOAA, we have lots of MLab from the University of California. We have a lot of institutions that are also supporting us to make sure that this is happening. And this is something that I think it's really important to stress and to acknowledge that the Blue Azores program, it's an accelerator of the process that has been done throughout the years in the Azores, but also an aggregator from different institutions. And they are all more than welcome to join, as long as we can review them each other in the visions of each institution. I think it's the main thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we found a lot of challenges with that, working with a lot of the local and regional authorities that are upscaling and replicating solutions that are going on in innovation action projects. In certain zones, it's okay, but to really upscale it on a greater and wider area, which we need it for, it's proving a bit challenging. I'm conscious of time, so I just want to check in with you. It is 2:00. We have one last question. I don't know if you have time for that, or if you would.
Yeah.
You prefer? Oh, yeah, time. Okay. Then Joao Cassaca says, back to the question of funding. Even if there wasn't funding problem at this early stage, do you foresee the future costs of running the MPA to increase to a point where other forms of funding will be necessary? Using new financial instruments for conservation, for example? If so, which ones could be used? Here we go.
One that was more evident, and it was vocal before the approval of the law by the Minister of the Environment of Portugal, was the availability of the environmental fund to compensate fishermen for their retraction of activity. So this is one of the major fundings that we are foreseeing, but there's a lot of I dare to say that there was never a time where there was much more money about the ocean than now. There's a lot of funding available. We just need to make sure that we are innovative and we are smart in terms of assessing those funds and directing them. So I would say for now, the Environmental Fund of Portugal is one of the funds that is important to reach.
Okay, on that word, thank you very much, Adriano. We
Thank you.
appreciate your time, and we'll let you get back to your conference. So thank you again for the
Okay.
great
Thank you
presentation.
very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, all. Thank you for the question.